So let me tell you something. I had to solicit this filter today because I just got back in and the kid is T.I. red. Okay? That's tied for the folks in the back. So this is like going on YouTube, and this is my reaction to there's no PTSD, there's no OCD. And that video was like a 5-second clip of this pastor, John MacArthur. And I had never really heard of him until that day that he proclaimed that there was no OCD and no ADHD and no PTSD for people. That was my first time hearing about him. But I found it to be very irresponsible to say, do people overuse those terms? I do believe so. They do overuse the words OCD and ADHD and all this other stuff. And some things are trauma based, really. And what he was saying was all of this is like grief related. And if you can't make it through grief, you can't make it through anything in life, basically. And I'm like, yo, this is so irresponsible for somebody to say just as a matter of fact like that, because you can't just gloss over PTSD, OCD, ADHD. You cannot gloss over that. With myself being a grief mental health therapist, and have dealt with people who are in traumatic grief and have seen and been victims of crime, I have worked in spaces where people have been killed, family members have been killed. I've worked in spaces as a therapist with vicarious trauma as well, in parent portraits. Okay, whatever. So I find it very irresponsible for someone to make claims that something does not exist. Post-traumatic stress does not exist. I find it the reason why it's so dangerous is because this is the reason why people don't go and seek help when they need it. Especially people in the church, because they feel as though they are not faithful enough and they're not strong enough to be able to work on their own issues, and to work on their mental health challenges when trauma does affect the brain. And it's natural in all of our bodies for situations to be able to affect our brain so it can keep us alive. But the thing about that is when we are out of fight, flight, or freeze or fawn mode, and we need to go back to our normal amount of functioning, some of us do not go back to that functioning at all because it was a traumatic experience. And that's when you go into like the nightmares. That's when you go into the flashbacks. That's when you go into disassociation. We have psychologists and we have psychiatrists and counselors and therapists and things like that. We have more research since Vietnam that we really know that it happens to our soldiers. It also happens to people who are in traumatic events, and even our kids. We have kids that are walking around these elementary schools and middle schools and high schools with actual PTSD based on the abuse that they've experienced, and some of the other things that they have witnessed, especially community crime. Even our parents, if you can be real, if your parent was raised in the South, and like my parents were raised in the South, my dad was raised in Montgomery, Alabama, there is, and I see this now, you can tell me anything about them being strong and they lived through this time, but you just think about my parents lived through the assassination of Malcolm X, the assassination of Martin Luther King, the John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy. They lived through the civil rights movement. My dad was in Montgomery, and you already know the history around Montgomery and Alabama area. He was a kid when the bombing happened in Birmingham. We have family in Birmingham as well. So don't tell me that this stuff does not exist. And I believe in some of the things that we have in these neurological disorders that we have, especially after COVID, that we have with our older population, comes from stress that was in traumatic situations, responses in our body that have not been addressed. I believe that. And then add COVID season. Add that situation that we are now 4 years into the whole COVID era, although people say it does not exist or we're out of COVID, but we are really not. whatever we experienced at the very beginnings of COVID, and even after the quarantines were over and we all decided we need to go back to work, all those experiences that we were indoors at January 6th at the end at the White House when that whole situation happened on January 6th. We were all at home recuperating, surviving, and most of us are still in survival mode. None of us have come down. Some of us have not come down out of survival mode after hearing that we were indoors in March of 2020. If you're an introvert and you like that, that's fine. I kind of like being indoors and not being bothered. I worked on a lot of my own healing, but at the same time, it was just a lot going on. But in generations ahead, we will know people who lived through COVID era by how they react to certain things. Like there's certain things that I never thought about before. Like where do we have masks to get on the airplane? Although I used to wear masks. I started wearing masks on airplanes. I started in 2015 after I got dreadfully sick. After flying in April to Vegas and back to Nashville in 2015, 2016, one of them eras. So I started flying with a mask. But just thinking about those things and hand sanitizer and how many times I still wash my hands and how many times, who got COVID now and all this other stuff, we are not the same people. So just to go back to that video that was on YouTube with John MacArthur talking about PTSD and OCD and ADHD, it's not real. Y'all get real. As a therapist, I have seen it. If you're a person who has lived with somebody with PTSD, you have seen it, you have lived with it. If you live with somebody who has OCD and ADHD, you know what it's like to live with them and to love them through their challenges and trying to find the right doses of medication and then changing your diet and all the other stuff happens. But you know that the stuff is real. So please don't be irresponsible and say that this stuff is not real, because it very much is. I've seen it. I have worked with people who are in traumatic grief in situations. I've worked with people who have even witnessed crimes, homicide, domestic violence, all of those things from the age of 6 all the way up to 99. So it does exist. Don't be irresponsible. If you have these things in mental health awareness, I'm going to let you know. Call for help, get your support systems, call out, reach out to a therapist like myself, TPGCC. If you are in Nashville, Tennessee, I can see you. If you're in Tennessee, period, I can see you virtually. So, yeah, we're not going to be irresponsible. Not in this month of May. We're going to get the help we need. Because things do exist. And even if you don't have a diagnosis and you're just dealing with the vicissitudes of life, like my minister used to say, holla at your girl. I love you guys and take care of you in Mental Health Awareness Month. And don't forget to check out the group spot on IG and check me out on YouTube at Forgotten Surviving Sibling Podcast. I'll see you soon. I love you. Bye.